Wild Meadow Brook. This is where I come most days just to absorb what nature has to offer. Almost everything that I build comes from something I've seen on this brook. If I'm traveling somewhere, I try to go look at water in that area so that I can build to that. But if it's local here, it's coming from this brook. So this is my water feature. I didn't build it, but I damn sure can't replicate it. And this is why I have such a battle about building a water feature at my home, because I can try to replicate this, but this is gold. The thing that I realized then, what people were missing, perhaps, when I saw their faces, when that thing turned on, and when I saw people just kind of standing there, silent, in awe. So then that's kind of when I realized, maybe I could do this for a living. Maybe I could create these crazy things and people would pay me to do it. It was like a transitional period that I was just like entertaining this whole thing. So I kept doing it on the side for years. At the same time, I was still servicing these ponds that I'd built. I had that one big job, which by this time had made it into Yankee magazine. And that kind of legitimized me as a builder, I guess. And I'm not sure if it was in the minds of potential customers as much as it was in my own mind. At this point, I'm still thinking to myself, I can't do this for a living. Like, I can't in New Hampshire where it's snowing or the ground is frozen nearly 6 months out of the year. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm gonna do this, in the summertime, and in the wintertime, I'm gonna build houses, because that's another passion of mine, is building. For a while, even though I was still doing the ponds, I was more focused on doing timber frame, log home construction, and I found a little niche in that where I was putting these full-size trees inside of houses. And I did that. I had some really great customers that just allowed me to really kind of experiment with that stuff. And then 2008 happened. I thought to myself, you know what? I've been building these water features for years. I had met April, and Aquascape changed the way that they sold to their customers, and they started using distributors. And at first I was just wild, because they had such a great way of doing things where you could buy direct and you could build anything from that catalog. But in the end, it was the relationships that were built from that relationship. April and I went down to a build at Charlie's, and that's where we really met a lot of the people from in this community. So at that event is where I realized there's a community behind this. And if there's a community behind this, then that means people are doing this for a living on a regular basis. And that was kind of like the next light bulb. Meeting these people then, I would have had the confidence to seize the opportunities that were right in front of me, and I didn't realize it. I made a rule when I bought this piece of property. I grew up coming down here swimming. I've never taken a rock or anything from the stream or changed anything in the stream. So this section here is that kind of a combination falls. You have the slide coming down left to right, and then you also have a sheet falls kind of in a horseshoe-shaped pattern here. This is one of my favorite waterfalls in the whole stream, just because it's very unique, and it has good sound, and the water is changing directions, and it's coming around, moving left to right and right to left. This section of stream is another part that I've studied kind of intensely, because in the Northeast you have large pieces of ledge, bedrock that most streams and rivers are cutting through, particularly in the mountains. And this shows this large piece of ledge that's kind of slid down from this other piece, and it's created this channel here that the water runs down through. And it's narrow, it's only about 8, 10 inches, 12 inches at the max. but then you have it spilling over and sliding down this piece of ledge here on the right, and then it continues down here. You just have all these nice little rivulets coming down through there, and they're, to me, a lot more interesting a lot of times than a big sheep falls or something of that nature. It's a more intimate space, a more intimate waterfall. The other part of this is I haven't had the opportunity yet, but I would love to integrate a cave cavern into a water feature. And this here is my inspiration. It's made by some glacial erratics that have just kind of found their way to this location. But that cave goes in quite a little distance there, and it has some daylight that comes through the left side, but it has a deep little cavern that goes down to the right. And it's kind of unique. It's kind of a place that you would just go to just get away from things, and it's quiet and interesting in there. An interesting thing that I found as I started down this journey of building water features was, in New Hampshire, we only have 6 months out of the year really to work in our market. So by proxy, we ended up doing a lot of travel work, broadening that market a lot because we were always networking, searching for other markets to go to in the off season. So in the beginning, it was a survivability situation where, you had to make a living, and then to do that, you had to work year round. And then at some point along the way, instead of being taught, I became the teacher. And I didn't even realize it happened until, people started calling me specifically to train their crew. It was kind of a natural thing for me, even though I didn't realize it. I grew up in a family of teachers. My mother taught for 30-something years. My father was a professor at a college for some time. My brother taught. And I didn't even realize that I had been taught to teach, which is even more interesting. When I'm hired to build a project like this, I feel like I'm being commissioned to create a work of art. And it's very much like a painter commissioned to paint a portrait of somebody. You would not have a third party enter into that and interpret how that should be painted. It's a very intimate relationship between the person that's commissioning you and the artist that's creating the work of art. One time I had a couple that was very disinterested in the building of the project. They wanted, a water feature in their yard, and they didn't really want to be part of it. We didn't see them the whole time. And when we were done, that person was like, nice. It's not the type of person that I enjoy building for. These clients were someone that you wanted to, when you were done working for the day, you wanted to sit around and, have a glass of wine with them, drink a coffee, talk about things. Those are the people, the real people. So this is one of the most organic builds that I've done recently. People say the rocks speak to you. When I was picking these rocks out individually, in my mind, it's kind of creating a puzzle, a three-dimensional puzzle. And I know, approximately where this rock would fit into this puzzle. And I wanted this to be seen from multiple directions. And this is an unusual site where you're seeing it from ground level and you're also seeing it from a second floor level. This falls has a slide. It's coming down, it's coming off of a sheep falls and sliding down, and then there's a nice little horsetail, little rivulet that falls in. It falls into an echo chamber, and it's projecting that sound out. Even when you're coming around the corner of the house, that sound is grasping you, and it's meant to draw you in. When I found this rock, I knew exactly where it had to be. If you notice, it's kind of cupped out and bowled out, and you see it from like a 20-degree angle looking down from the second floor. And it's kind of sheeting down around, but then it bowls up and turns on a wall and dumps back in. And you have a convergence of 3 falls going into 2 falls. And it's kind of representative of a convergence of, a place that brings you together, like a home. And that's kind of what I felt with this family. So an important aspect to me in designing water features is to break up the stream. I don't like to have a single fall coming down like a staircase. And you'll notice that this rock here is kind of breaking two falls apart. But I also have a small stream of water coming down over to wet that rock and just kind of break it up even more and blend it together. It was important to me to find just the right rock for this application because it's a focal point. That's the center of the waterfall. This was very unique in this job where normally I would bring rocks in myself. These rocks were at a neighbor's house that's has an excavation company, and he allowed me to come down there and pick out the rocks myself personally. So every morning I'd go down and mark the rocks, and they would magically appear. And the guy that was bringing them up with a loader staged them perfectly in an arc, just as I'd ask him, around the water feature. What I found to make it intimate is I don't need 10 to 15,000 gallons of flow. Oftentimes it's a single pump. My favorite pump to use only does between 4,000 and 8,000 gallons an hour. All these little rivulets, these little details, that's what makes it intimate. Not a big crashing falls that is impressive but belongs in a mall. As far as outcropping rocks and how I build, it has to be believable. I have to build it so that you can walk onto this site and think that this has been here for millions of years. The way that I do that is when you have a slope like this that's exposed, it's almost like you uncovered what's here. You just simply dug the earth off the top of these rocks and they've always been here. I've studied how ledges in this area are exposed naturally through weathering patterns, and that's what I try to replicate. And when I travel to different states to build, for instance, South Carolina, I was down building with Jay Duke. They have no rocks in the area that he builds in. So all the rocks are imported. So I look at the landscape around me and I say, okay, everything here is very flat. There's little rock, and the rock that is there is close to the ground. So I change the way that I build depending on where I'm at. I started by setting my outcropping rocks. These are large. Some of these rocks are 7, 8, 9, 10,000 pound rocks. And the majority of them are buried under the earth. So you're only seeing a third to a half of the rock, but you can see with the eye where that rock goes, and that's part of the earth. And so what I did is I set those big rocks in this hillside along the edge down by the patio so that it just kind of blended down. I just can't bring rocks to a site and lay them out and only have rocks, because when I'm in nature, it's not just rocks, it's wood, it's stumps, it's plants. So it's very difficult. It's like having a painting and you only have one type of brush to paint with, you only have one color to paint with. It doesn't work, right? You have to have a palette of colors, you have to have several different tools to do that. What I've done is blend all those components together. You have stumps, you have wood, you have plants, you have mulch, you have different gravels and different size cobble and moss. All those things are important to kind of really build the final outcome, because no one wants to look at a painting in one color done with one brush.
If you ever grow up, there's one thing you'll find. Most people that you meet are just about out their mind. They try to tell you how to live, they try to tell you how to die. They tell you don't get too low, but don't get too high. The best thing you can do is don't listen too close. Walk on to your own beat and keep 'em on their toes.